everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I see that we've got some people here already. Lots of people in the chat. I'm really excited to see all of you. And if you could just give me a thumbs up and tell me that the volume's okay. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so I want to make sure that everything is good on this end. I've got my camera here and my laptop or my computer and a million things open. So I just want to provide as much value as I can in this session. And hopefully we'll try to keep it to less than an hour, and then we'll see how it goes. If we like this, then maybe we'll start doing these once a month or whatever. But so we're going to talk about choosing the right size sweater. Now, I'm specifically focusing on top-down raglans and top-down yokes, but some of this can apply to other sweaters, some probably not. But I am going to be using an example sweater, Flax by Tin Can Knits, and that's free online. So you can go grab it. You can just, I don't have a link for it, but if you do a quick search on Ravelry or just Flax by Tin Can Knits, it'll pop right up. And you can download the pattern and you can use it as a reference as we're working through this, because I'm going to use myself as an example. This is actually the Flax. I made a lot of modifications. You can see it was a crew neck sweater to begin with, but I've turned it into a V-neck and lots of other things as well. But that's a good pattern to sort of start with. So we're going to use that as our example because you can just grab it for free and we can talk about it. Before we do, I just want to pop over and say, hey, I've got to look down at my screen. I can't keep looking at the camera, but I just want to, I see there's a lot of people here. So I just want to say hello. I did have a poll on there if you want to tell me if you've knit a sweater before or not, so I can just gauge where people are at. So those eyes says, I have knit 2 dog sweaters, but no people sweaters. I've done the opposite, lots of people sweaters, but I haven't knit a dog sweater. My dog is not into that. Hi, Monique. Oh, and Cindy. You've knit some really cute dog sweaters too, but the sweaters I've knit for myself never fit. Well, we're going to talk about why that happens today. Some of the reasons, at least. Hi, Diana and Antisocial Auntie. Knit a sweater years ago and it came out 2 sizes smaller than it should, so I haven't tried it since. So we'll talk about that kind of thing as well. All of these things that we can do to check our size. Of course, gauge is really important. Like you have to do a swatch and check your swatch. And I've got a video about that. Try to remember to link it after this. I'm going to make a note to do that because swatching is a really important step for knitting sweaters. Hello from Sweden. Hi, Anna. And oh, Stitch Itch is baking lasagna. That sounds really yummy. And Monique is having leftovers. Goodness, there's a lot of you here. Quarat, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but hi from Maryland. Yes, you've knitted a sweater. That's great. Okay, lots of thumbs up, so volume is good. And oh, somebody has done a Tunisian crochet sweater. That sounds great. That's on my list to try. I haven't done Tunisian crochet yet, but someday I'll get to that too. And then Rand, I mostly knit sweaters because I want to work on something I'll actually wear. I agree. I really love knitting sweaters. So welcome to everybody and everybody else that's coming on. So I said at the beginning, I'm going to be using Flax by Tin Can Knits. If you want to go download it, it's a free pattern. And I'm going to be referencing that a little bit today as we go through everything that we're going to talk about. So this is what we're going to cover. Just very quickly, I'll go through my little table of contents here. The difference between body measurements and finished measurements. Those are 2 different things that you're going to find in a pattern. And then choosing the right size. And we're focusing on top-down raglan and top-down yoke sweaters. They are very closely related. The only difference really is where those increases are placed when you're working top-down. Some of these things will apply to other sweater techniques. Some of them are not going to apply. Like you would need other modifications for a set-in sleeve or a drop shoulder. There's some other things you can do, but we can't cover every single sweater today. So we're going to focus on those top-down seamless sweaters because those are the most popular, it seems like. I like all different constructions, but we're just going to focus on this for now because that seems to be what people like to knit in general. If you have a different preference, I would like to know because I'm thinking about some other sweater classes and it would be nice to know what other types of sweaters people want to knit or like to knit. Okay, so after we talk about choosing the right size, the next step is to actually look at the schematic and the finished measurements and look at all of the different parts of the specific size, and make sure it's going to fit your body, especially the sleeves. When it comes to one of these top-down sweaters, the biggest issue I often see is the sleeve circumference isn't right for the size you want to knit. And there's some things we can do to adjust that as well. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll quickly go over some other modifications you can make, like changing the neckline, changing the sleeve length, the body length, adding waist shaping, things like that. And then I do have a group coaching program, and I want to talk about that really quickly at the end. And then we'll answer all of your questions, but we'll try to keep it to just an hour so we're not going on here all night. So if you have questions as we're going, you can ask them, and if it feels like a good place to stop and answer them, I will, or otherwise we'll come back and look at them after we get through all of my notes. So the first thing was body versus finished measurements. Those are two different things. And you're going to see both of them in patterns, or you might just see one. If you just see one, you're going to see the finished garment measurements, because you need to know what size that garment actually is. Some patterns will also have body measurements, and these can come in different forms. It might say small, medium, large. It might use letters A, B, C. It might use numbers, sizes 1, 2, 3, all the way up till 9 or 10 or 11 even. Or it could have bust sizes. If it's a woman's sweater, it could have like 36-inch bust, 40-inch bust, 44-inch bust. Those would all be body measurements. And then you're going to see the garment or the finished measurements. Those refer to the actual sweater itself. So body measurements refer to your actual physical body. It's telling you to measure your body and see which number you're going to fall. If it gives you a bust size, sometimes it doesn't, but it will have the finished garment measurements, and those will have all of the measurements you need. But those are the measurements for the garment. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to actually look at this over on Ravelry. Okay, so I'm looking at the flax worsted right here. And you can see right there, it tells us the sizes available. Hold on, I've got to close the screen there. Okay, so it has all of the sizes here, and obviously this sweater has a lot of sizes from 0 to 6 months all the way up to a 6XL, and it's a unisex pattern, so for everybody. So those sizes that are listed here, the 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, the extra small, those are saying like your body sizes. Like if you always buy an extra small, then you might want to knit an extra small, but you might not want to, because those terms really don't mean much. Honestly, like one designer, that could mean a 32-inch bust, or an extra small in it for another designer could be a 34-inch bust. Same in the store. Like you could buy extra small jeans in one store and they're like maybe what, a size 2, and you go to another store and they're a size 4. Like it's sort of generic terms. But what you really want to look at is just underneath that. This says finished chest measurement. Now this is referring to the sweater itself. It's telling you this is how large around the circumference of the sweater is at the bust, the fullest point of the bust, or at the chest. That's what we're looking at here. So it's important to understand the difference between those two things. Sometimes a pattern won't even have like the body measurement sizes listed. It'll just have the garment measurements, but really that's all you need. You need to know that, and then you can use your body measurements and the amount of ease that you want to choose the right size. But that you have to understand those two differences. Now, all of these are based on averages, like average body sizes, because of course knitters or designers can't go around and measure a bunch of people to figure out what size everybody's going to fit into. Like the average arm circumference of like somebody who wears a size 8, or a bust that's 42 inches, what size is the average arm circumference for them? We can't really go around and do that on our own. So we have what we call size charts, and one of the most common ones for knitters is let me go to another screen here, is the Craft Yarn Council. So this is the woman's size chart. So these are averages. So we have our chest measurements or bust measurement here in inches and centimeters, and then a lot of other measurements as well, like back waist length, the cross back measurement from shoulder to shoulder, the arm length from the underarm to your wrist. Personally, that's one I always have to change. Like sweater patterns are consistently like 2 inches too long. I have short arms, I guess, compared to the average. I always have to adjust that. And you probably, if you've knit sweaters before, have discovered there's some things about your body that don't fit in that average. We all have our own things that are outside the normal average body. And when you're knitting a sweater, this is your chance to customize those things. So I can customize my sleeve length I have to every time because it's always going to be too long. It's always like 2 inches too long. So I always have to adjust that. But we have to start somewhere. So designers use the Craft Yarn Council chart, or there's some other ones as well that they can use as like standard averages and then they have their swatches and they can design from those numbers and a lot of math to get to the design. But this is where they start. And the base thing with a woman's size chart is, of course, the most important measurement is the full bust measurement. And these averages are based on a B cup measurement. And what that means is that the circumference of your upper torso, so if you take a tape measure and you measure like right up in your underarm all the way around, you measure there, and then you measure around your full bust, that a B cup means there's about 2 inches of difference. And of course, a lot of people are not 2 inches of difference. They're not a B cup. They might be smaller, they might be larger, they might be quite a bit larger. But all of these, the designers and the patterns have to start somewhere. So they start with this average, and the average is that you're probably, they're going to use a B cup measurement, meaning you're 2 inches different from the upper torso compared to the full torso. And that's important because this is where you want your sweater to fit you really well. So if you fall outside of that average, this is when you end up with a sweater that's way too big and sort of like falling off your shoulders because you used your full bust measurement and it's larger than that 2 inches B cup difference. So this part of the sweater also ends up way too big and doesn't fit you well. But this is why you probably have that issue, is because sorry, I'm losing my train of thought there, is because you're outside of that average. Your arms could be a different length, or you might have more of a belly or hips or a larger bust, or you might be broad shouldered. All of these things put you outside of the average, but designers have to start somewhere. So they start with these averages, and then it's up to us to modify patterns to fit us the way we want. Otherwise, designers would have to like write whole books just to create one pattern, because there are so many people, so many things that they could include to adjust it for people that fall outside that average. But they can't do that. That's just asking too much, but it's on us to figure out how to do that. So I'm going to stop real quick right there and let me just see if there's anything in the chat. Ooh, lots of people. Hey, everybody. Goodness. Let's see where I left off here. Deborah, I've knit multiple sweaters, knit one every year for the grandkids. Ah, I love that. And knit sweaters for yourself as well. And Leah is working on, I prefer cardigans and V-necks as well. And Anna, knitting mostly sweaters. Sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't. Well, let's get to where they're always fitting you just the way you want. And Annalie in England. Hi, Annalie. I think that's how you would say that. And Sarah in Vermont, and Kathy in Winnipeg. Hey, Canada. Oh, and Kathy, you've got a question already. How would you a D cup adjust a B cup to a different cup size? We are going to talk about that, definitely. Okay, so everybody understands like the difference between body measurements, finished measurements, and then why we have these averages, like why we have to use like the Craft Yarn Council charts to at least give us a baseline to start with when you're designing a pattern, or for designers when they're designing a pattern. They need to start somewhere. So when we look at, like when we looked at flax, when it talks about, it is a unisex pattern, but I think it still applies here when it's talking about the different bust sizes. Let's go back there again. So these finished chest measurements, it's assuming within the pattern, I'm guessing because this is unisex, so it might be a little different. But if it were a woman's sweater and it was based on the average, the B cup, then it means that at the full bust, you would have these measurements. Like for the smallest adult size right here would be a 32 inch. That means they're assuming that the upper bust, the upper torso, right in the underarm, then that's going to be about 30 inches. Now, if there's only a 2-inch difference between those two numbers, it's not such a big deal. It becomes a big deal when you're talking 4, 5, or more inches of a difference. If your bust is 5 inches larger than your upper bust, and you choose a pattern based on your full bust, so you're adding an extra 5 inches up here too, which is probably a lot in the top of a sweater, especially if you want it to be more fitted. If it's an oversized sweater, then you can probably get away with it. But the more fitted the sweater is, the more important understanding like the difference between your upper torso and your full bust measurement. Okay, so this is going to bring us right to the next section. Let me get back over here. Okay, so now that we've gone through like the body measurements, finished measurements, and the difference between the upper torso and the full torso, this is where it comes into choosing like how to choose the right size. So, and knowing that this is how patterns are written. I think it's important to understand that's how they're written. They're written for an average B cup size. So if you are a B cup, probably a C cup as well, because that's just adding another inch, and you have average shoulder width, then go with the full bust measurement. You're just going to use your full bust measurement to choose your pattern size. So if you're going to knit the flax, use your full bust measurement, add a couple of inches of ease, and you can just choose the size that's closest to that. So if you're B or C, I think you'd be fine as well. And your shoulders are sort of average width. Now, somebody did ask me, how do you know if your shoulders are average? And I honestly didn't know. I had to ask some other people. And the ones who have broad shoulders, they tell me that you'll know because every time you try on a shirt, if it's going to fit in the shoulders, it's way too big everywhere else. Or if you get it to fit through the body, the shoulders are way too tight. So if you have that issue when you're shopping, then your shoulders are probably broader than the average. What you could do is go to the Craft Yarn Council website, look at those women's standards and measure your shoulder to shoulder point. And then look on that chart and see, do you fit, does it fit within the average for your full bust size or your upper torso size? You can use that to check as well. But from the people who have broader shoulders, that's what they've said is like, you just know because when you try on clothes, it's always an issue. So if your full bust is B in average shoulder width or C cup, then you can go ahead and use your full bust to choose your size. So everybody else, you're going to use your upper torso. You're going to use this measurement up here. You're going to take your tape measure and put it right up in the underarm area and pull it tight right there and see what that measurement is with your arms down. Don't keep your arms up. Put your arms down. Have somebody else do it. If you have a spouse or something, have them take that measurement for you, because that is a sort of a skeletal measurement compared to like your bust size can change all through your life. When you lose weight, when you gain weight, when you're having children, like your bust size changes because that's sort of like a fleshy, fatty area. Same with like your upper arms. You can have more flesh there or less fat there. But there's other measurements that will never change, like your shoulder to shoulder. Your shoulders aren't going to get wider and narrower no matter how much weight you gain or lose. They're going to stay where they are. They might have a little more fat on them, but they're pretty much going to stay in the same place. And that upper torso measurement is related to that skeletal frame. Like you might have some fat there, but it's not going to be as much as you would have in more fleshy areas on your body, like say your hips or your thighs or your bum. All of those are sort of like, they can get you outside the average because we all have different weight fluctuations in different parts of our body, but our skeletal frame is pretty much going to stay the same. So when you are larger busted, or you have broad shoulders, or if you have a very narrow bust, like say you're smaller than a B cup, then you might want to take that upper torso measurement. Everybody else definitely does. Broad shoulders, a full bust, anything larger than a C cup. Take that full bust measurement, and that's where you're going to start when you're choosing a pattern. Instead of your full bust, you're going to use your upper torso measurement because it's more related to your frame, and you want to make sure your sweater is fitting you through here. I'm really touching my shoulders a lot. So you just want to make sure that that sweater is fitting very well here. And if you're broad shouldered, you want to make sure it's fitting, but you want to make some other adjustments perhaps to narrow through the body. That's something we can talk about. But so if you are one of those people, if you have the broad shoulders or a full bust larger than a C cup or a narrow bust, use that skeletal frame, that upper torso measurement. Once you have that, then it's about adding the amount of ease you want to it. Now, a lot of the patterns will tell you that they recommend this amount of ease. They recommend 3 inches of ease or 6 inches of ease. And that's a recommendation. It's not a law. Like, you can choose how much ease you want in your sweater. I'm not even sure that this one recommends ease. Oh, they do have, share my screen again. Okay, so if we look right here, it's telling us like Francine is wearing an ML 40 inch with 1 inch of positive ease. And then, so they explain it there. They don't tell you how much positive ease to use. They're just giving you some examples of how much you could use. Other patterns will say, okay, so the model is wearing this sample size with this much ease, or we recommend this much ease. That's a recommendation, not a law. You can decide how much ease you want in your sweater. And personally, I'm on the larger side, and I feel like sometimes there can be too much ease in a sweater. I don't need an enormous amount of ease. I can get away with less ease, and frankly, it's less knitting, less yarn that I'm using to knit something that's going to fit me. If it's like another 10 inches of ease, that's a lot of extra fabric the larger the sizes get. So the larger the body, probably the less ease you need compared to like some of the smaller sizes to still get the same look or the same effect. But so that, let me go over to a different screen here. We'll go back to the Craft Yarn Council, and we're going to look at their recommendations for, or their basic, let me see if I can find it. Oh, I think it's right here, actually. On this page, it does, so for a quick overview for those who don't know, ease is just the amount of space between like the garment you're wearing and your body. So you can have negative ease, like say you wear socks. You want them to like be smaller than your foot so they'll stay in place. Or like a camisole under a sweater, you want it, it's probably smaller than you are. And then when you put it on, it has a negative ease. It's smaller than your physical body. And then we get into ranges of positive ease where the garment is bigger than your body. Like this one is a couple of inches of positive ease. It's actually negative ease at my full bust, but it's a couple inches of positive ease at my upper torso. And if we look at the Craft Yarn Council website right here, you can see like these are the general breakdowns of like the amount of ease for different sweater shapes, I guess. So like 2 to 4 inches less for negative ease, and then your actual measurements for close fitting or 0 ease. And then classic fit is 2 to 4 inches of ease, which is where this sweater falls. It's in that 2 to 4 inches category. And then a loose fit is 4 to 6 inches of ease. And then oversized is anything more than 6 inches. So that's like the general categories. So you can look at a pattern and you can see what the designer recommends, but then you can think, what do you prefer in your garments? Do you like really generous, oversized garments? That's pushing it for me. I think 6 inches, depending on the garment, I might want like a super oversized cardigan, you know, for around the house. But in most cases, I prefer anywhere between like 2 to 6 for, depending on the garment, of course, but that's more personal preference, and you can decide what you prefer in your garments. So let's stop that. Okay, I'm just gonna pop in over here, see if there's anything. All right, everybody's behaving. We don't have any weird spammers. We're good. Oh, I agree. I agree, Rhonda. My sister always tells me patterns are just a suggestion. Yes. Yes. That is definitely a thing. Like there's people who follow the pattern like to the letter, and there's people who change everything or somewhere in between, you know? For me, it depends. Like I will, like a shawl, I'll probably just knit it straight. Sweater, I change things because I want it to fit me, so I have to modify it. And Sarah, I agree with you on reducing ease when you are a larger person. Whenever I see a large amount of ease, I always pick a size on the low end. I don't know why, but it's just more flattering. Yes, I agree. Yeah, it just sometimes it's just too much fabric on a larger body, and you need to, it still looks good with slightly less, even though like an extra small might have a lot more fabric or ease comparably. I don't know, I think it falls more like that's a good time to like maybe think of like a percentage of ease, like, and then it would actually be a smaller number of inches, but percentage wise it would still work out on your body. I don't know, that's like a whole topic to get into right there. So when it comes to, let me get back to my notes here. So now we've gone through ease. Okay, so we can get back to the flax pattern again. So when we get to the finished chest measurements, going back to that discussion, so you're going to use either your full bust if you're a BC and average shoulder width, or your upper torso for broad shoulders, full bust, like larger than a C cup or narrower bust. Start with that measurement and then add the ease that you want. And then total that up, the ease plus that measurement, whether it's your full bust or your upper torso, and then go to the pattern and see which size is closest to what you want to knit. So I'm going to use myself as an example. So my upper bust, I just measured myself today just to get that measurement, 46 inches. Let's say I want to add 2 inches of ease. So that puts me at 48 inches. That's what I'm going to look at in the pattern. But obviously, when I go look at this pattern, I see 42, which is too small, 46, which is the same as my upper torso. And we need some ease in this part of the sweater. I should have said that earlier. You need a little ease. You can have some negative ease everywhere else, but you need some positive ease through the shoulder area so you can move your arms and it's not like going to be too constricted. So you want a couple inches at least of positive ease there. So that's why I said I'm 46 inches and I'm going to have I want 2 inches of positive ease. So that gives me 48 inches. So I can see the size 46 bust measurement won't work because I need to have some ease in there. So that means I would have to go up to the next one, the 50-inch bust. So if I count that out, that would give me, if I'm 46, that's going to give me 4 inches of positive ease in my upper bust, which is still within that classic fit. So that's okay. And then my full bust is 51. So that means I'm going to have an inch of negative ease, which is okay at the full bust. Now, this is something that scares a lot of knitters. They don't want any negative ease in their sweaters. But when I'm talking about 1 inch, and it's just at the fullest point of my body, and it's not like we're built like blocks, like there's a curve. So at the highest point of that curve, it's an inch. And I think that's about what this sweater has actually. And it doesn't look super tight on me. It fits me. So a little bit of negative ease just at the bust is not a bad thing. If the sweater is going to fit you well everywhere else, then you can do that. If you don't want any negative ease, you could add like a bust dart or something else later on. You could modify that pattern to make it fit a little looser in the bust. But we don't want to end up, I wouldn't want to go up to like the 55 and a half because that's like almost 10 inches of ease through the upper torso. And that's way too much. That sweater would be falling off my shoulders. I definitely don't want to do that. If I stay closer to the other one, that's only going to be 4 inches of positive ease up here. Now the 55, if I were to use my full bust measurement, would be just fine. That would just be what, like 4.5 inches of positive ease over my bust, which if I were to choose a pattern the standard way, that seems fine. 4.5 inches of ease on my full bust, just fine. But then when I think about that upper torso through my shoulders, that's 10 inches of ease through this part. That's way too much. That's why you end up with sweaters that are too big, because you pick your full bust, and if it's a large difference between your upper torso and your full bust, then this part of your sweater just ends up way too big, bigger than your shoulders really need. Remember, that skeletal frame isn't going to change. Like, that's going to stay the same no matter how much your weight distributes or goes up or fluctuates or whatever. That frame is going to stay the same, and we want that sweater to fit really well there. So for my example, I would want to choose that 50-inch bust measurement, and that would give me 4 inches of positive ease at the upper torso, 1 inch of negative ease at the bust. So I could knit it just the way it is. I could add some bust shaping if I wanted to make sure it was a little loose across my full bust. It really depends on how I want it to fit. But I wouldn't want to go much higher than that, or it would be too big through the shoulders. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Okay, we're good on questions and things like that. So now that I know the base size, like in my example, I want to knit that 50. I don't know which one that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What? So the 2XL. So that is like where I would start. So what I would do next is I would go to the actual pattern, and I can't show you the pattern. If you want to follow along with me, you can go get the pattern. It's absolutely free. But so I can't show you this part because it's in the actual pattern and they don't have this. If they had it like on their page, then I could show you that, but they don't. But the next step, I've chosen my size. So we've got that. We're good on that. I'm using my upper torso measurement instead of my full bust, adding my ease to that, choosing the size that's closest, which for me was the 2XL, a 50-inch bust circumference. So what I do next is I go to the pattern itself, and I want to look at the other measurements for that size. So if the pattern has a schematic, hopefully it does. This is where things get iffy. A lot of patterns don't include schematics and all of the other measurements. You can still figure them out because you can take like the gauge in the pattern and get the 1-inch stitch and row gauge, and then go look at all the stitch counts and row counts and figure out all of these measurements yourself. It takes some math. But I really like it when a pattern has a schematic because it does all of that for me. And the flax pattern does. So what I would do is I go to that 2XL and I see it's a 50-inch bust. That's going to work for my upper torso. A little bit of negative ease at the bust. And then it's got the different arm length measurements, sleeve length. So I can check those and see if I'm going to have to adjust. Probably am, because my arms are 2 inches shorter than the average. And then the other thing I want to check in any pattern when I'm doing something like this is the upper arm circumference, because that is another area that often, ends up being either too small or too large when it's worked with the rest of the sweater, where we're knitting top down seamless. We're working on the sleeves and the body of the sweater all at the same time. And it's very common for the sleeves to either be too small or too large. In my case, it's usually too small. So I need to check that as well. And when I go to the pattern and I check this, the bicep circumference for the sweater is 17.5 inches. My bicep is 17 inches. So that's only giving me 1/2 inch of ease, which is not much. You want like a couple inches in the sleeve, or it's going to look like a sausage casing. Like, you need a couple inches. 17.5 inches is not enough. So my arms are more fleshy than the average for this bust size, obviously. So this is where the next modification, not even modification, I've chosen a size, but now I'm looking at the size to see if it's actually going to work for me. And I'm seeing this size, it's not going to work for me because the arm circumference is going to be too tight. So what I like to do is just look at the next size up, the 3X. Now, I know I can't do that bust size. 55.5 inches is going to be way too much ease at the upper bust. But the arm circumference is 19 inches. So that's going to give me my 2 inches of positive ease. So this is where we start mixing and matching two patterns, and we create our own base size. because in the 2XL, 17.5-inch circumference is only half an inch of ease, way too small. But the 3XL, the bust is way too big. It's going to be too much fabric through the shoulders. So what do? We're going to combine two patterns. You can take the two different measurements and put them together. So let me go back to my notes here. So if I were to knit this specific sweater, which I already did if I'm wearing it, then there are a few options I could do. So let me go back. Yeah, okay. So if the sleeve is too small, like in my example, the sleeve for my base size is too small, I can knit the neck size up, which is going to be enough positive ease, but it's going to be too much in the upper body. If I want an oversized sweater, it might be okay. I don't like an oversized sweater where it's 10 inches of positive ease through my shoulders. That's too much in this type of a sweater. Drop shoulder, it would probably be absolutely fine. But for a raglan shoulder, you want that to, like, you want the raglan lines to sit on your shoulders. You don't want them dropping off way over here and your neckline way too big. So, I mean, it could work. I don't think it's going to work in my case because the 10 inches is just a little too much. So the other option is to choose that neck size up, the 3XL, use that as my base size. I'm going to cast on what it says, like for starting at the neck, and set up for all of the different parts, the two sleeves and the body. But what I'm going to do is change the increase rate for the body. And I'm going to stop it when I get to that stitch count for the 2XL instead of the 3XL. Does this make sense? This is like the big game changer for me, was discovering that I could take two sizes and sort of like make a Franken sweater. Really, this is what we're doing. We're going to combine two sizes. Some people have done this with socks. If your ankle is a different size compared to like the ball of your foot, you can like knit one size at the ankle and then after the heel, reduce the stitches or increase for the ball of the foot. It works with sweaters as well, especially this type of a sweater. So I'm going to reiterate what I said. Because of that upper arm circumference, it's too small in the base size that I want. What I'm going to do is choose the size that's right above that, the 3XL in my case, because that gives me a 19-inch sleeve, which gives me 2 inches of ease in the sleeve. But when it comes to like after I cast on, get all my markers in place and I start knitting in the round, I'm going to look at the stitch count for the 2XL just for the body and see where I'm supposed to be, see what the difference is between the 2XL and the 3XL when it comes to like the number of stitches for the body. And I'm going to reduce that number of stitches. So I end up down in that 50-inch circumference for the body itself, but the sleeves will still be that 3XL size. Does this make sense? This is like, for me, this was like a light bulb moment to realize that I could combine two sweater sizes. Oh, thank you, Monique. She says it looks nice. Thank you. I like purple. So I was looking at some yarn and I'm like, oh, let's do a purple sweater. So, okay, let me get comfy here. Okay, so that's what we do if the arm circumference is too small, but you can have the opposite problem. What if the upper arm circumference is too large? Let's say you've got a full bust, but you are like small everywhere else, like you have very small arms. Then your other options there would be to choose the size for your bust, and that would just have more ease in the arm. But if you don't like that option, then you could do like sort of the opposite of what I'm doing. Like you would choose that size based on your arm circumference, which would be smaller than like your bust size body of the sweater. And then look at like the bust size of the sweater that you'd want and see what the difference is in stitches. And you're going to increase some stitches for the body and still have that slimmer arm. So this is like this is the big thing. You can do the same thing with yoke sweaters as well. Like the increases are done differently because you don't have like those raglan increases where you've got like, 8 increases points or whatever. You've got like maybe 3 or 4 increase rounds where you're doing a lot of increases. So it's a little bit different that way. But what you can do, there are some tricks with that as well. You would do the same process. You would choose the size with the yoke sweater, you're going to choose your size based on the full bust, even if you have a big difference between your upper torso and your full bust, because a yoke, when you knit it, it's like a big circle and it's going to be draped over your full bust by the time you finish it anyway. So you have to accommodate for that. But I feel like that would be a lot. We're already at like 640 here, so it would be a lot to go into that as well. But you can add and remove increases to like the increase rounds, or add increase rounds if you had to add more space. So it's possible to do this with a yoke sweater as well. Oh, and great question. If you change your increase rate, wouldn't it change the depth and make it join too high? This is, it really depends on the issue. Like in my example, I cast on enough so I would have focusing on the arms to make sure they were going to fit. And then I looked at the difference in the stitch count for the size, that larger size, and then the one size smaller, to see how many fewer stitches I needed. And then I kept the top part the same. Like the first 2/3 of the raglan, I didn't touch, because the whole point of that raglan is to have like those sharp lines, the raglan diagonal lines that you have. And you don't want to change those too much. But when you get down to like the bottom third, they're starting to go under your arm. Nobody's going to see those. So that's where you can start making these changes. So in my case, I started to slow down the increases just for the body, just for the front and the back. So 4 stitches. So one round I would do all 8 increases and then my knit round. The next round I would just increase on the sleeves and I would skip the increases on the body. And then do another knit round and then do all 8 increases and then just repeat that. And I did sit down and sort of like use some hash marks to figure out, to space out those last few, because I wanted the increases to end at about the same point. But you do have to check your yoke depth as well. That's another important, there's a lot we could cover with this, but I figured this would be the big thing I wanted to talk about, was how to combine the 2 different sizes. But there's so many things we could talk about when it comes to good sweater fit. But this is a big one, like choosing the right size based on your upper torso, and then checking the pattern to make sure that the arm circumference is also going to work for you. And if it's not, how to combine 2 different sizes to make sure it fits. Okay, Allison, any thoughts on the best way to do for a sweater that uses compound raglans? Those are sort of in a camp by themselves. Like, I think these adjustments would be harder because those, I mean, every pattern is different, so it's hard to say. But generally with compound raglans, I think what they do, more increases quickly, so it goes out this way, and then it starts to come down that way. But I mean, the patterns are always different, so it's hard to say. This is just more for like, I guess, the classic raglans that just have, like increase 8 and then do a knit round, then increase 8 and do a knit round. You could probably still work it out with a compound raglan, but it's the shape that you're going for. Like in the compound, if it's got like the lines going that way and then down, you probably don't want to adjust it when it's doing the more horizontal lines. You want to wait again still until like you're in the bottom part, because any changes that you make can hide in the underarm and nobody's going to see. Like nobody can tell that I decreased or increased less through the body than I did through the sleeve down here. Like nobody can see that. And you can also do the opposite. Like if you're choosing a size that's fitting your arms, but the body is too small, like you have very small arms, then you can do the same. You can add increases, like on the plain knit rounds, you could pop in some increases just for the front, just for the bust, if you wanted to. Okay, so that gets us to like the base modifications that we can make, like just to pick the size. Those are the things I would do first to pick the size. And then I would go through the pattern and look at the yoke depth and the sleeve lengths and the body. But all of those things can be modified as well. You can change necklines. Like this was originally a crew neck. I turned it into a V-neck. I added like a little decorative lace on there. Changed the length of the sleeve. I added waist shaping to the back. What else? I think that's all I did. Oh, I adjusted the sleeve length and the body length. It's actually a little on the short side. I think I need to pull out the hem and make it just to like an inch longer. But there's always something to fix when I knit a sweater. But I did have to rip back and fix things quite a lot. Like I had originally tried to do all of my increases at the sides, and there were too many of them, and they sort of pooched out at the side. So I had to rip back, and I moved them all to the back, and that worked a lot better. But there's lots of other modifications you can do. And what we just talked about is one of the like sections in the course. So it's a group coaching program. I just want to quickly show you that. Let me see if I have yes, this one here. It's a 10-week program. So once you join, you would get access to like the first section of the course, which is preliminary stuff, where we talk about like swatching, checking your gauge measurements, washing and blocking, choosing yarn, choosing a pattern, all of that. You can see here are some of the sweaters that previous students have knit. And so it has like a whole course platform. I think there's a lot of lessons. I'll show you that in a second. And it has a whole bunch of like 2 different workbooks in the first 2 weeks, and then more like different worksheets throughout the course. There's like a little community group too, so you can pop in there and ask questions during the week. And then once a week, we'll have Zoom sessions where we meet for an hour and I answer all of your questions, sort of like we're doing now, but you'll be on the screen too if you want to have your camera on. And you can come on and ask me questions about your specific sweater, and we work through them together, like do the math or, ask whatever questions you want about your sweater specifically. And we work through this, like this whole process we just did, where I walk you through how I choose a size and then check the sleeve measurements and all that. I can do that with you in the coaching sessions. So it's sort of broken down into like 6 sections. Some weeks will take like 2 weeks to cover, like working on the body takes a while. So we'll take an extra week in there, but we have like a couple weeks at the beginning where we do just preliminary things, swatching, gauge. And then the week after that is we get into like all the modifications, like talking about necklines, talking about shaping rates and all the math. There's not a lot of math, but you have to do some math and short row bust starts and all of that. Then the first section is all about what we just talked about, like choosing that size and starting to knit the yoke. And then the body and the sleeves and finishing, more student sweaters there. So I'll have a link to this if you want to just go look at it. And there is the schedule for the class right there. So every Wednesday we'll alternate between noon and 6 p.m. So one week it'll be at noon, one week it'll be at 6, just for people in different time zones so they can at least attend some of the sessions. And when all of the course, like each section will be released. There we go. So that is the course itself, and all of the course videos are all pre-recorded, so you can watch them whenever you want, and you always have access to them. And then I keep adding more things, so it keeps. I think it's up to like 75, not full videos because there's like workbooks and things in there too, but there's a lot of stuff. And I'm adding cardigans to it this time as well, just like basic top-down raglan cardigans. And then I think in January I'm going to be adding like steeked cardigans if I have time. We'll see about that. But I'm going to give you a little peek at like what's in the actual course itself. Not that one. This one. Oh, let me see. Is this it? Oh, that's it. Sorry about that. Trying to share the right screen. So this like would be your course dashboard basically. And like you have access to this little welcome section right away. And for those who have never knit a raglan before, then there is like a little baby pattern. So you can like do a little test pattern of test sweater first, and then like how to get access to the community forum. And then like our Zoom kickoff call will be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. And then you'll also have access right away to this first section. So you can see this is what, just to like get yourself started, you want to get your pattern and your yarn. And we talk about all the basic things. And then in the very next week is what we just discussed here. We dive a little deeper into choosing your base size. So for raglans and for yoke sweaters, and talk about necklines and shaping. And then there are more, like, it's just a lot. You can see here's a list of all of the class sessions, like they're broken down into weeks. A whole section on short row bust starts, worksheets, how to calculate them. I walk you through 2 different sweaters, this sweater, and then also a top-down yoke sweater as well. And I'm going to be adding a section on cardigans. So there's lots in there, maybe a little too much. I'm not sure. So does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about tonight? Just get a little drink. Okay, it doesn't look like it. Nothing. Anybody need more clarification on like choosing combining two different sizes? So here's the link. It's also down below the video as well if you're interested in joining the next coaching session. It's going to start next Wednesday. We'll have our kickoff call where we'll get started and have a few weeks to like get your pattern and your yarn and get your swatching all done. Oh, Sita, thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad it was informative. I think that was it. I'm checking my notes one more time to make sure I didn't miss anything, but we're good on time. I was worried about having too much in here. I feel like there was a lot more I could have talked about, but it would have been too much. Monique, yes, upper bust and full bust are key. They really are. Like, I feel like it's not talked about enough. Like, patterns are just like use your full bust, but no, not really. Only if you're a B, maybe C cup and narrow or normal shoulders, you're fine. But everybody else, you're probably going to want to know that upper torso measurement. You're not going to need it for the rest of the pattern. You only need it when you're choosing your size. And then you can like check it out. You don't need it anymore. But just to choose a size that's going to fit really well through the shoulders. And I mean a fitted sweater. Like if we're talking like an oversized drop shoulder, you can chuck this out. You don't really need to know your upper torso measurement for an oversized drop shoulder. Not a thing. But when you want a raglan sweater that fits, or even a yoke sweater, you don't want it to be too big on your body, then you want to know that upper torso measurement. It's really an important measurement. But once you have it and you've used it to choose like your size, you can ignore it for the rest of your knitting time and looking at your pattern. It's just to choose the right size for your body. But then also relating it, checking that size to make sure the arm circumference is going to work, because everything is knit all at once. When you're doing that top-down yoke or top-down raglan, you're knitting like the body and the sleeves all together. You want to make sure that there's enough room in the sleeves, or not too much if you're on the small side. I always talk about enough room because my arms are larger and I always end up having to look at that. Usually have to choose a size for my arm and then make adjustments for my body. But that is definitely a possibility when you're knitting a sweater for yourself. You can make these modifications and make it fit you really well. Is this, yes, it's being recorded. It's going to be right here on YouTube so you can refer back to it. I'm probably just going to leave it. And I just think it's good information for people to have. So the replay will be right on YouTube as well. For using two different sizes, could it be possible to make an intermediate size maintaining the proportions? I think so. You might have to like work out. I mean, if it's not in the pattern already, you would have to like work out your stitch counts yourself, which isn't impossible. Goodness, use your gauge swatch. And that's one of the things actually we talk about in the course is what if you don't match gauge, but you like your fabric? That was an issue with this sweater as well. I didn't have the same gauge, so I used my own gauge and then used that to choose the size. And that's a whole thing, but that's in the course. That's another topic we could cover. I think I have actually talked about that some on here. But I think you could do an intermediate size, but you'd probably, if it's not in the pattern already, you're going to have to like math it out, work out what that intermediate size would be. But it's definitely possible. It's all it is like to knit a sweater for yourself. You need to know, you need to swatch, get your gauge measurements, take your body measurements and turn all of those body measurements into stitch counts using your gauge. That's really all a designer does. Like they use, like we talked about the Craft Yarn Council charts or other body charts. They make a swatch, they get their gauge, and they use that gauge information and translate that into stitches and rows based on the Craft Yarn Council or other body measurement averages. That's all it is. You can do that for yourself as well for one sweater, not like 9 sizes like a designer would. Okay, Jana, when it states 6-inch ease, for example, is this 6 inches on both sides or 6 inches altogether? It would be like full circumference, like where we're talking about knitting in the round, or even if it's knit flat in pieces, I think it would tell you the difference if it's two different things, but generally it's going to say like that full circumference. It's 6 inches all together. Okay, lots of thank yous. I don't see any more questions. So I think we're going to wrap it up right there. But you're also free, if you're watching like the replay, leave your questions down below. If you have questions about the course, then you can send me an email as well. Here, I think I've got, yeah, I do. There, you can send me an email, ask me questions on there. And with the coaching, with the class, the students are more than welcome to, like, sometimes people don't like to come on Zoom and show their face and talk on camera. That's totally fine. We can email back and forth and work on your pattern as well that way. So just email me at hello@tanyaknits.com. And you can go see like everything in the course on this page. It's linked down below as well. So I think that is everything. Thank you so much. I was really happy to see so many people here. I wasn't sure. It's been a long time since I've done a live stream. So it was really nice to have you join me and chat and share your questions. And we didn't have any spammers trying to leave weird comments in the chat, which is nice. I was worried about that. But I think that went well. It was nice to do this. And maybe we'll start doing this once a month. But that's going to be it for tonight. So thank you for joining me. And I'll see you later.